Yeah, looks so. If anyone else joins, I'll keep adding them.
Okay, great. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. It is nice to be here. It's nice to see also some friendly faces. Shannon is a current student, and Chris recently graduated from the HFID program. So I'm excited to chat with them today. In terms of what we want to do here is just some quick intros. So I'm Janelle. I oversee the HFID program here at Bentley, and I also am a graduate of the program. So I graduated in 2007, nearly 20 years ago. Went into industry for close to 20 years, and then just came back a few years ago to teach at Bentley and oversee the graduate program here. And I will hand it to Kyle.
Hello. I'm Kyle Mondino. I'm one of the assistant directors here at Bentley for the graduate admissions team. So basically, I'm your first line of support. Anything application related, anything related to learning about the programs that we offer or the Bentley community. I'm a Bentley undergraduate alum and a Bentley graduate alum. I just recently completed the Human Factors program this July. So it's still fresh. I still have homework stress that pop ups. Yeah, so feel free to reach out to me. I'll type some of my information so you can get a hold of me. I think I've talked to some of you already, but don't hesitate to reach out. And then I'll pass it over to well, Shannon's next in line on my screen, so I'll pass it over to Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Evans. I started the program in January of this year, and I'm currently working as a director of marketing for a small cybersecurity company. I had been interested in the program since undergrad. We'll talk a little more about that, but I've really been enjoying my time here. And Kyle helped me with my application, helped me to get started here. Chris, on to you.
Yeah, thank you for the passover. Hi everyone, I'm Chris Xenofontos. I am a product person turned UXer who's been doing design and research for about 6 years now. I graduated the program in May actually after about 4 years taking the program part-time as I was working. And now I am actually a user experience researcher at NYU Langone, which is a pretty recent update.
So recent, it didn't even make it to the slide, Chris.
Oh.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to give like a little tee up of what the components are of the grad program because it is certainly more than just the classes. And then I wanted to really just turn it over to more of a discussion. For those who are on the line that might have questions for Chris or Shannon or even Kyle, because he did just graduate from the program as well. You can feel free to raise your hand. You can feel free to chat them in. We'll be monitoring that. We certainly want to make sure that the questions that we ask are maybe the questions that you all have top of mind. I've formulated some if there aren't any folks that want to ask questions. But as I said, I encourage you to do so and make sure you use this time to your advantage. In terms of the master's in human, let me skip forward a couple. And actually, before I do that, let me just also let you know about the agenda. So we're hoping to get through majority of the content within the next 30 minutes. And then Kyle will share a little bit about the application process. And of course, we can save some time at the end for questions. But as I said, I encourage you to ask them throughout as well. But in case you're kind of thinking about, the order of events here, I just want to make sure we're clear in terms of what we're going to cover. Okay, so a big part of the program, of course, is the time that you spend in class. So we typically host our classes in the fall and spring semesters. We sometimes offer a summer class or a winter class that you can also take, but the majority of our classes happen in the fall and spring semesters. They're typically 14-week class format, so we meet once a week. For 14 weeks, you can join in the classroom on the Waltham campus, or you can join through Zoom remotely. We have hybrid classroom setups to accommodate all different types of students. And I want you to think about class time as not just an opportunity for your professor or lecturer to just PowerPoint you to death, which I think sometimes, especially if you're a working professional, sometimes you can find yourself in those meetings of, what do we call it? Death by PowerPoint. There's less of that happening in these classrooms and more around, let's cover a little bit of content, let's talk about it, let's debate, let's have some group activities, let's bring in guest speakers. I spend a fair amount of time also having students doing kind of like critiques of other students' work in an anonymous format. So students get like real-time live feedback, not just from me, but from other people in the classroom. So it's an important part of the program, but I don't want you to think about it as just you show up and you like just sit there and consume. You're expected to actively engage in the class. So certainly want to make sure that that is something that you are aware of and your expectations are set around. We also invest heavily in our experiential learning part of the program. So within most classes, you will have a project. Oftentimes that project is an industry sponsored project. So we have different companies that engage with us and provide real problems for our students to solve. We also have pop-up projects and projects that aren't necessarily aligned to, say, a particular course or curriculum, but are available for people to sign up and volunteer for. We do have 3 research faculty on staff in our department. Each of them has a lab. We'll talk about their areas of expertise in a little bit, but they're very interesting future forward type interactions with humans and technology. We do have an internship program as well for those who aren't working full-time or want to start trying out some of the working experience in this space. So that is a great way to engage experientially. And then we have our UX center on campus as well. So this is a real-world consultancy, brings on real-world projects and engagements, and we have a group of students that also work in that center alongside our senior consultants to execute against those projects and kind of learn in real time while they're taking classes as well. So that's sort of the second pillar. And then the community and the network. So there's a great diverse student body. We also have over 800 alums who have gone through the program, and we're connected in various ways through LinkedIn, through our alumni office. They often come back and volunteer for different workshops or advising sessions with our students. And then we have a great partnership in our graduate career support team as well. So regular events, regular biweekly newsletters, and a lot of ways that they're working to connect our students with alums and other people in the field in industry or even in academia. So I'm going to pause there because that's a lot. But I also would love to hear from Shannon and Chris, like if you think about sort of the program itself and maybe your experience with these different pillars. Like, are there areas that based on your career goals or reason for joining the program were more valuable to you than others? Are there things that you have been surprised by once you've started that you weren't expecting? I'm curious to just sort of hear your thoughts on how you've engaged with this like platform, if you will.
I'll jump in, Chris, there. So for me, one of the things I was surprised about was how engaged I am able to be as a remote student. I'm in Texas and I don't get to go to campus. I hope in the future I'll be able to attend some classes in person, but that was one of my original concerns was how engaged am I going to be able to be? Is the professor going to know who I am? I had taken online courses in undergrad, but they weren't immersive. It was a traditional online format, and you submit your assignments online. This is completely different. It's I get on my Zoom for my classes. I'm there on the big screen. The classmates who are in the room can see me. The professor can see me. I can raise my hand and participate. And like Janelle mentioned, there's a lot of the class where you're in breakout sessions and you're interacting with your classmates and getting to know them, and getting to know, who you want to partner with in other classes going forward or who you want to learn from their experience. So that was the class time was something that I was really unsure about in the beginning, and the experiential learning, but that I have found to be just invaluable, to help me learn and keep me engaged.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, I was a remote student as well for pretty much my entire, not pretty much, the entire time I was in the program. And it was a great experience, but to add to what Shannon was just saying, um, you as a remote student, you're still able to forge connections with all the students that are either remote or in person. So I felt like I left the program with a really strong network. You get to um, meet a lot of great people, work on a ton of fun projects with them. You get to learn at the same time. You get to be an active participant, not just in the classes, but also the community as well. So even as a remote student, even as someone who only showed up to campus for graduation, I still got to be a part of the community, got to do lots of extra events and projects, to be engaged, to meet tons of people, and to really grow and expand my network, especially if you're in the Boston area too. I think especially Bentley has a really well-known name in that Boston area.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Great. So um, when oftentimes, so let's just step back a second and think about kind of the reason for coming to grad school. And I think when I talk to prospective students and when I talk to students who are in the program and alums, and even thinking about myself way back when I was considering grad school, people have a why. And one of and I'm going to sort of show you maybe the three whys, if you will, of why I tend to hear people are interested in grad school. And so the first one is typically like career wise, and oftentimes financial, right? So a graduate degree often allows you to apply for roles that you might not be able to secure with just an undergraduate degree. It might also bump you up into other pay bands. There are both like career and financial benefits of getting a graduate degree, but of course there's the investment of the graduate degree as well. And one of the common questions I get is sort of like, is this going to be worth it for me? So that's one. The other is coming to grad school to build knowledge and a skill set that you might not have, or maybe you've only learned on the job. And so a lot of it is around building that like internal confidence that you are a deep expert in a particular area and you can kind of hold your own in a work setting, or draw on some of the knowledge and skill set. And then one of the other benefits I hear, and I feel like I hear it less commonly, but maybe more so once people actually go through our program, is the network. So the students that you're with, your peers, and then also the alums that you engage with. So I was hoping, and I have these three on a few different three little bubbles here. If you're comfortable, Shannon and Chris, I would love to hear any reflections that you might have on how the degree has impacted, or how you have perceived the value of the degree, or even going through the process of securing the degree in Shannon's case, how that's helped you in your career, how that's helped you, sort of translate into the work that you're doing now, or where you see your trajectory, those types of things. So if you're comfortable sharing, even starting perhaps with your reason for coming, and then maybe tying any anecdote or story or information you can to sort of like career or financial benefits.
Yeah, I think I can jump in here first on this one. So what kind of drew me to Bentley and this program in particular, and was one of the core reasons for me wanting to join this program, was to become an expert in the field. I was very clearly in like bucket number two there, the skill and knowledge.
Got it.
I was coming at an interesting time in my career where I was transitioning from product into UX. I had done like a UX boot camp, but I really wanted that internal confidence and to build that skill and knowledge like this reason is talking about. And Bentley, I think Bentley just has that like baseline of quality education that you get from doing this program that made me feel confident once I was also going through the program as I was learning things, but also leaving the program as well. And I think now afterwards, the network has come into play for me pretty heavily as far as securing a role, as well as just looking at the industry in general. I think having a master's degree now is something that can be really important. As when I was joining UX, I did a boot camp. That was a very popular thing to do. It's still a very popular thing to do. But it feels like there's maybe a little bit more like negative connotations to having gone through a boot camp now that there wasn't originally 5 or 6 years ago. So now I feel like having the achievement of a master's in this field is a great tag on the resume to say, to be proof of, yes, you are an expert in this field now.
For me, my why has shifted a little bit. As I mentioned in the beginning, I learned about Bentley in undergrad. I actually went to school in Massachusetts before I moved back to Texas. And my UX courses that I took were actually based on Bentley's boot camp and on some of their UX courses. And when I first went to undergrad, I didn't know how to express what it was I wanted to do, other than to say I wanted to make websites suck less. I think I actually told Janelle that when I first met her. Um, and that was what I really wanted to do. And as I went through my undergrad program and learned about UX, I was so deeply into it. Like, this is where my brain goes automatically, and I didn't know there was a name for it. I want to do this. Um, and then as I got into UX UI design and development out of college, I really realized that the individuals who are helping to make some of the biggest impact and who had a depth of knowledge that I didn't have were the UX researchers or the human factors researchers. And I was fascinated by what they did and how they did it and how they delivered those results and how they were actually able to be significantly more influential through their roles than just being in that UX UI, primarily design recommendation role. They were getting to be in there with the users more than I was able to. And so I waited about 15 years and finally came back. So, now the shift for me has definitely been some of that career and financial. I want to have more of some of those leadership roles and more of that influence, but also be able to, make incrementally more than what I'm currently making. And there's no doubt in my mind that this program is going to enable me to do that.
Thank you both for sharing. I can definitely resonate with some of those things. And Kyle, I'm curious if you have thoughts too. I know when I went through the program a long time ago, there was really no such thing called UX. Like, this is a field that sort of has emerged in the last 10 to 15 years, at least from my perspective. So when I got on the other side of it, it was sort of like, okay, well, what am I going to like? My first job was human factors engineer. And so I guess why I'm sharing that is that I think it's interesting that with Shannon, your story of like being drawn to knowing what you want to do, but not really knowing what it's called yet. And I think what's nice about where we are now as a field and as sort of like a practice is that we do kind of have these words now, right? This shared knowledge. And there even are now undergraduate programs, believe it or not, that are focused on UX. I have a couple students in the program now who have undergraduate degrees in user experience. I also deeply resonate, Chris, with sort of your path and wanting to feel that level of confidence around the knowledge and skill set. I vividly remember being in the program, and at the time I was working at a design agency, and I was young, like probably like just not experienced enough to feel like I could maybe express a strong opinion in a meeting, because and if you've ever worked in the design space or in the agency world, much of what the conversation is about, at least at that time, was around what people's personal preferences were around a design versus what might actually be good for people. And so I remember it was the night after I had had a class about why writing words in all capital letters is probably not a great idea for readability and scannability. And I remember the designer had put up a mock-up of this homepage, and all of the drop-down menus, like all the subcategories, were all written in all capital letters. And I was like, everyone was like, oh, I really love the, like, I'm not sure I agree with the color of the menu. I remember the comments being like very aesthetic based. And I remember being like, finally being like, okay, moment, right? It's like, so I think we should, put the menu items in sentence case. And I explained the reasoning why, and everyone was like, all right, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Like, there's actually science behind why something is good or not good. And so having that confidence and then also having, that knowledge to pull from can be really helpful in these types of settings where, yeah, design is somewhat subjective. So thank you both for sharing. Kyle, I don't know if you have any reflections from your own experience.
Yeah. So my pathway is a little bit unorthodox about how I got here. I come from a management background, which isn't necessarily a traditional background for candidates who are interested or pursuing this program. One of the things that I noted post completion of my undergraduate degree was that while I learned a lot, it was hard to articulate in like a quantifiable way on like my resume, the skills that I had developed through that program. And so, working at Bentley, I got an exposure to a lot of our programs as well as a lot of the alumni, and I got to understand better the skill sets and the types of roles and the motivations for this program. And there was a couple of things that kind of popped up for me. One, I wanted to develop hard skills. I wanted to point and say, I have a skill in doing this thing that makes me a subject matter expert in a particular area. Kind of to your point, Janelle, being able to pull out that hat and put it on and be like, hey, no, I know something that you don't know about why this isn't going to work or how to make this better. And then having that credibility with the degree to say, this is my support, my evidence about, why what I'm saying is right, but also all that project experience that you build up through the program to be like, I've also done this multiple times, so I can demonstrate why this works. So that was one thing that I found attractive, for the program in terms of the motivation. The other thing is that when I started to reflect on like my career path, I'm still in the point where I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. If you told me what job do you want to have, if you could have any job, I don't know, retired. But one thing that I do know that I really enjoy is I like solving problems. Like if you present a problem to me and you're in a group setting or something like that, and you're like, oh yeah, this is an issue, I don't really know how to fix it, I get excited thinking about how we can fix that or ways that we can circumvent it or so forth and so on. And so when I learned a lot more about this program, when I learned about, the skills that are required to be good at experience design, to be good at, user experience and research, it's problem solving from low to high levels using data and science. I'm like, sign me up. And so, my motivation was developing a skill set that I could market. I particularly like that this skill set is highly transferable. I work in education. And I can tell you right now, having gone through the program and the things that I'm learning, I have incorporated it into my roles. And I think it's weird for people to think about. I work in graduate recruiting, but I'm using UX within my roles on a variety of things that you don't necessarily see in the background. And I think that's super exciting, is knowing that the things that I'm learning, the skills that I'm developing, I can apply to this industry or potentially another industry in the future. And that transferability and knowing that I can market myself in different ways and that I'm not necessarily limited to one field is super attractive to me because I think the spice of life is variety. So that's kind of my odd path and perspective on things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Kyle, around the sort of love for problem solving and the applicability of the skill set anywhere. And I can tell you that those on the call, Kyle and I work very closely together. And so having him as a partner is great because our minds our minds work very similar, or let's say we get excited and geek out about a lot of the same things. But one thing I wanted to show quickly is the curriculum. I'm going to warn you first, there's like a lot of words on this slide, but I'm curious, and I know Shannon, you just started in January, but Chris, obviously you've gotten your degree. I'm curious, like, you know, if there's any class that stands out to you as being super memorable, or any particular project that you worked on, like maybe share a little bit about the learning experience and some of the content of the classes. So I don't know if Shannon or Chris, you have something that comes to mind.
I was waiting to see who would unmute first. As I mentioned, I've been in the program since January, and I've been taking one class at a time because I'm working full time. This summer, I actually took an information architecture course that was just fabulous because we worked with an actual nonprofit client. Their problem was that they had 3 disparate websites for different functions of their nonprofit. And we worked through it as if it was a paid client project. We had a small teams that we worked with. We conducted end-to-end full IA research, including, you know, a deep dive site audit on all 3 sites, card sorts and tree test. We did heuristics. We did a little bit of user testing, and we came up even with a mock-up of how they could merge their sites, and we gave them feedback on what we recommended, but not just what we recommended, but how to do it so that it was actionable. And everything that we recommended was, these are options that you have, right? So that we're not being prescriptive. And I think it was very impactful for me because it was this, I mean, we gave the client essentially an 80-page book of findings and recommendations and details. And so it was very deep. And it was in the, you know, just in a summer project, and every insight was evidence-based and it wasn't opinion. And it was the closest thing, I think, to a real client consulting engagement, but inside a classroom. And I think for me, it just really showed how that rigorous research leads to clarity, alignment, even among our team. And hopefully, I'm going to take a look at their site in a few months, and hopefully we'll see some meaningful change.
Yeah, I love that story. I think I have a lot of similar stories from other projects that I've gotten to do here at Bentley as well. I think a couple classes that have stood out to me, and partially they've been standing out to me, is for a little bit of recency bias, because some of the coursework I've been able to apply to my current role. Actually, is some of the classes where I learned a bit more of the quantitative style of methods. So measuring the user experience as well as research methods for human factors, I think is the Penta's class. Got to dive into a little bit of quantity. I'm not a data scientist by any means, even after taking these 2 classes, but I was still able to learn how to utilize some of the quantitative methodologies and apply them to some of the things that I'm doing right now as a researcher, where there's been just some historical survey data that's come in over time that other teams have run, but I'm able to take that data and run more complex analyses on that and pull out some of the insights that no one has been able to tackle so far. So that has been a great way that I've been able to use some of that coursework in my current role. So those have been standing out. And also I want to shout out 751 not 751, multimodal interface with Munya, because that is the course where you get to physically build something. And when I took that course, we were able to build something. You write a paper, and if you write it in a certain way, you can submit it to a couple conferences. And so we submitted our paper to a couple conferences. It was accepted by one of the conferences, and I went to Rome to present our work, which was like an amazing experience to be able to go internationally and present some of the work that we got to do. So that was such a cool experience that I never would have had if I had not taken this program or this course.
I forgot about that trip to Rome. That was so cool that you did that, Chris. a cool, cool memory and experience to have. Yeah, so the curriculum itself, just to sort of, and thank you both for sharing the stories, particularly around the client work too. So I had mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but we typically have a client sponsor in most classes, and they range from nonprofits like Shannon had shared to, this semester I'm actually working with Welch's, which I think of grape juice, but my students have reminded me or told me that Welch's, they tie it to fruit snacks. I'm like, okay, like I am not my user. Let's just say it definitely dated me. I felt that one of my experiences where I'm like, okay, yeah, I am older. But they're trying to roll out enterprise generative AI technology to their workforce. And they want to make sure that they roll it out the right way and also understand people's appetite around it and perceptions of it. So I'm teaching the qualitative research methods class this semester. So we're going and doing a whole bunch of interviewing and other types of research approaches to understand what is generative AI in the context of work. How does a company that's 100+ years old adopt this new technology successfully? What does success look like? And so we're deep in it right now, interviewing Welch's employees, but then also other people who have industry roles who may or may not be using generative AI, and coming up with a list of recommendations for Welch's. So like we also worked with the Celtics in the spring. I've also worked with some startup companies. And so we try to pull in a lot of different clients to engage with our students. So you can get a taste of what it's like in these different industries doing different types of work. And two, you get to practice this in a very low risk environment. Like if you mess up, it's okay. And it's okay if you mess up in your real job too, but it hurts less, I think, when you can do it in more of a learning setting where the goal is actually for you to try something and learn and get better. And so that is one of the things that stands out to me for our curriculum. The other thing to call out here is that there tend to be classes that are focused a little bit more on like higher level strategy, right? So managing a process of creating an experience, leading a team, design ethics, right? Just because we can build something doesn't mean we should build something. Other classes that could tie to other disciplines like product management or innovation. And then you also see some classes that are more focused on the design craft, right? So let's say design innovation, prototyping, conversational interface design. And then there are others that are focused more on the craft of, let's say, research. So we have qualitative research classes, we have measuring the UX, which is more of the quantitative take. So the sort of curriculum is designed to be flexible enough for you to pick and choose based on what your career goals are. And that's one of the things that we really strongly encourage our students to do before they start taking classes, is to define, why are you here? Why are you in grad school? What do you want to do with this degree? And how do we get you from where you are today to that particular goal? And that goal allows you to pick and choose your classes, to pick the projects that you might want to work on, to choose your internships, all of that good stuff. One other point I want to call out is that you also see some non-human factors electives. So we sit inside of the Graduate School of Business. 8 of your classes will be human factors classes, but 2 need to be outside of human factors. And that's because a core pillar of our program is around doing human-centered design with a deep understanding of how it works in the world of business. So I've been in this space for a very long time, and I would say that one of the things that I've noticed through my experience is that people who practice UX or design or research or even product management, innovation, oftentimes we have not an easy time tying our work to something that maybe the business cares about. And so that's actually a big thing that I push through our curriculum in human factors, but also why we have you take 2 courses outside of human factors as well. So if you do your due diligence, which I encourage you to do if you're looking at other programs, there's a lot more programs that are related or similar to ours than there were, 20 years ago when I went through it. But I will say that the business focus is one of the key differentiators of our program, and is one that's unique and I believe to be critical to be successful in this space. I wanted to ask a couple more questions of Shannon and Chris, and if anybody has their own question, feel free to raise your hand or chat it in. I will I would look for questions now before I ask mine, because I want to make sure if people have questions that you're able to ask them before we move on. Any questions? Going once.
I think George might have a question.
Oh, George, yes. George, you're on mute. Maybe you chat it in, George. Oh, there you go. You're off mute.
Okay. Thank you for the program. I highly appreciate the presentation. My question is there is any remote with a remote? There is any session in which, as a consultant, I'm consulting, I do design and other aspects, I do projects and what I do, and the program would be highly helpful for my industry, for which of course I'm interested. My question is, there's any remote hands-on platform on campus, and which time does the remote or individual appear on campus to have things done?
I think the question is related to presence on campus. Do you need to be on campus?
The question I'm asking is, in doing designing, because I do a lot of literature, I do a lot of content, and I'm working on my website as well, or in working on collaborative team players into what we are into in human development and designing. There is any platform in which remote students can come on campus and participate with other classmates and get projects done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the question is about access. So you can, you don't have to choose if you're going to be remote or in person solely. Like you can come back and forth. So I have some students that they live on the West Coast, but they know they're going to be in the Boston area for a couple of weeks around the holidays. So they want to make sure they come into the classroom once or twice. Or I have students that choose to come to, let's say, the graduate student, not admissions, but the orientation. So they come to orientation, we host a career visioning workshop right around that time for HFID students. And so they come and do their kind of focused in-person time during that period of time so they can build some connections in person. And then, I think Chris had mentioned that in multimodal, for example, you work with a group to create a physical product. There are ways to collaborate with your group. So you can be part of creating that product, even if you're not even in the same room as them for the duration of the semester. So I guess what I'll say is that it is highly flexible. It's built to be that way, to be what works for you and what you prefer.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think Kyle has some other info we need to get to. So let's see. I have two, and I'm gonna pick, let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm gonna ask you this one. So, what advice?
Hey, Janelle, can I pause you real quick? Nina's got a
Yeah.
question.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's a
Nina, you can
question.
unmute.
Sorry, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just had two questions. The first one is that I've heard applicants typically have 4 to 5 years of experience before applying. So the first question is, how much prior experience do you recommend before applying? And the second question that I have is around pushback. One of the toughest things that I've experienced in my professional experience in the UX field is communicating with stakeholders. So I was curious to know if you recommend any of these particular courses to kind of strengthen communication skills around those types of conversations.
Yeah, good question. So typically the students that enter our program have at least 3 years of work experience, and on average somewhere between 6 and 7 years of work experience. So we tend to ask and look for people to join who have like lived working professional experiences that they can reflect on, because that's a lot of what our discussions are about, real world scenarios and situations, and probably some of what you're describing in your second question, right? Of like, how do you convince people? How do you get people on board? Many of our classes weave that theme into our work. So for example, in my qualitative research class, it's not just about how do you do qualitative research, it's about how do you align stakeholders ahead of time? How do you then deliver the information to them so in a convincing way? How do you build your communication around action and insight versus just sort of, okay, here's something interesting that we learned. I would say there are also other courses like our management course that would be useful for developing that skill set. And then outside of human factors, there are plenty of courses like strategic communication, negotiation, many courses that can help with the goal of what you're looking for. So certainly lots of things there. And then Shannon, yeah, chime in here.
Can I add to that really quickly?
Of course.
On our class that we had on Monday, in my user testing and assessment course, we had a guest speaker come in, and one of the things that she specifically spent time talking to us about was presenting findings of your testing based on your audience. And she actually broke it down for us. You know, if it's a marketing audience, if it's an in-house audience, if you're talking to executives, what do you do if the right audience isn't there? How do you deal with some of that pushback? So that it's interesting that you asked that, and I literally had that class on Monday.
I will also add, in terms of like competitive profiles, right? So candidates applying to the program, it's a holistic review process. And so while, these statistics on this slide represent, the average or the competitive candidate that we typically see within the program, it isn't the end all be all definitive, you have to have this or you're not going to be admitted. We recruit from a wide range of experiences. We have everything from food designers to architects in the program, engineers, to more of the traditional UX backgrounds. What we're ultimately looking for is that you've demonstrated you can be successful in the program. And there are different ways to do that. Some of that is through professional work experience, demonstrating that you have experience working on projects, teams, collaborative environments, within research or design fields, or product management field. It is a wide scope, but you're just trying to demonstrate that you have those professional skills to be able to be successful on those corporate sponsored projects. Equally so, we also like to see that you have an understanding of what you're signing up for. So even if you don't come from a UX or an experience design background, we want to know that that you have an understanding of this program, that you have an understanding of the field, that you have a career objective. These are all strong indicators that you can be successful in the program. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for. So something to keep in mind. And when in doubt, connect with us. We're happy to go over, whether it's myself or Janelle, we're happy to go over your background with you and, talk about whether we think that the program would support you. And then the other thing I want to add on to that conversation that Shannon was bringing up in terms of like classroom exposure about like, how do you bring your subject matter expertise to leadership to impact change or create buy-in, is that a fair amount of our professors have industry experience. and they bring that into the classroom. I think Chris and I actually, if I'm not mistaken, we took Daryl's class together, right? And do you remember at the end of his session, do you want to talk about that presentation that he did about the things that he learned and kind of how he adjusted when he's working with presenting to leader? Or do you want me to take that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, you should take that one, Kyle.
Okay.
That is good.
So Daryl Pinto is one of the professors teaching the program. He worked for Google. He currently works for ServiceNow. But he talks about throughout his courses, he talks about having to learn how to present data and research and findings to a higher level representatives of his organization, because you do have to generate buy-in. And he talks about some of the pitfalls that he's encountered and some of the ways that he's learned to adapt. And so that experience that the professors bring from their own careers does end up in the classroom, sometimes through guest speakers, sometimes through their own personal experience, or just best practices. Again, we are based in a business school, so that those tools, those concepts, those best practices are pervasive throughout the program.
Couple of good call outs, Kyle. Thank you. Just for the sake of time, I've got your slide up. If there's anything you want to cover here.
Yeah, I can go over this really quick. I know I've talked to some of you, but if you're interested in applying for the program, we do have 2 intakes. We have a fall and spring intake. Spring intake is pretty much passed for international candidates who aren't already in the U.S., who don't already have a visa. So if you're an international candidate who requires a new visa, you'd probably be looking at fall. Domestic candidates, the spring application is still open. We can actually admit candidates up to like a week before classes start, so second week of January. I do not recommend waiting that long. If you are interested in spring, you definitely want to start your application soon. And then the fall application, we have multiple intakes. This is the list of the application requirements. It is pretty streamlined, straightforward. We'd like to see a copy of your resume. If you have a LinkedIn, we also do like to see that. You can either include it on your resume or when you sign up for information at Bentley, you can include it. We require 1 letter of recommendation. If you're a working professional, typically a manager or supervisor. If you're a recent graduate, we'd be looking at professor. We just ask no friends or family. You have the option to submit a 2nd letter of recommendation. You'll have a couple of essay prompts to pick from within the application. Just pick the one you like best. We are looking at critical thinking, effective communication, no AI for the essay. We are not judging your ability to prompt AI, we're judging your ability to communicate. The GMAT GRE is optional. I often say that this is a great tool if you are looking to make your application more competitive, or if you're looking to offset a weaker GPA. So we are looking at strong scores for the GRE. That's traditionally about a 315 or higher. For the GMAT, probably about a 580 or higher with the updated Focus Edition. English language test score are for candidates from countries where English isn't the native or primary spoken language, or where you have not completed your undergraduate degree in English. And then if you completed your education outside the United States, we do also require a NACES member course-by-course transcript evaluation. That helps standardize our review process. I'm happy to talk about that more if you have questions about it, but it is also included in the application requirements. And then finally, an interview. The interview is traditionally completed by myself or Janelle. Again, this is to gauge your understanding of the program, to ensure that it's aligned with your goals and that you'd be successful in it. We typically will schedule that after you've submitted your completed application. In some cases, if I've met with you, if you had a really good conversation and we've covered the topics, you may not be requested to do an interview. So that's pretty much it for the application requirements. They're available now. All of you, since you're attending this session, you can submit your application for free through BusinessCast right now. We do also offer scholarship. So during the application process, there's a question: would you like to be considered for merit aid scholarship? Just say yes. It is based on your competitive profile. It's a discount range, so typically 0 to 40% is the range of scholarship. We do look at everything in determining the scholarship award, and it reduces your overall cost of tuition. We also encourage students to consider tuition reimbursement if it's offered by your company for working professionals. There are sometimes government grant opportunities or even state and local grant opportunities. And then we do partner with different loan providers that provide student financing if you need it. We do only bill on a per course basis. So basically the number of courses you sign up for, that's what you'll be charged for. So it's not a semester-based billing. It's not a year-long or program-based billing. The total cost of the program is for 10 courses. So current tuition rate is $6,095 per course, not including scholarship. So it's roughly $61,000. Scholarship would reduce that total amount. So that's high level about cost of tuition and funding. And then final slide. Application deadline. So as I mentioned, the spring deadline is coming to a close fairly soon. There is some flexibility post-December, but the university does close at the end of December for the winter break, and we don't come back until about the second week of January. So definitely want to try and get your application in before the end of December if you're interested in spring. And then fall, we have multiple rounds. We just finished our priority round 1. Priority round 2 is coming up in December. For the first 3 priority rounds, basically a month later is when you're going to get your admissions decision. After February, we move into our rolling decision. So every 2 weeks, we'll be releasing admissions decisions. International candidates, it's really important that you finalize your application by May because the immigration deadline is June 1st. And then for domestic candidates, we can recruit up until August. With all of that said, we have reached program capacity the last few semesters. And so we have reached a point where we've had to start declining students, not because they were bad candidates or had bad profiles, but because we just did not have capacity to enroll any more students in this program. So applying early is important. Otherwise, we might have to push your admission down to a different cycle. So again, any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to support, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Shannon and Chris, for joining and sharing your stories. Appreciate it. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Reach out to Kyle or I if you have any questions. I think, oh yeah, there's this little QR code thing too at the end if you want to grab any of those. But again, thank you, and we will be in touch, and we hope to hear from you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation.
So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. It was great seeing you all, and thanks for listening to my story.